Now, 10 alleged members of a Russian spy ring have been arrested by the FBI for trying to infiltrate U.S. policymaking circles. Some members of the ring, seen in a courtroom sketch, have been living in the U.S. for more than 20 years. The arrests happened here in New York, Boston, and Arlington, Virginia, according to 2 criminal complaints unsealed yesterday. The complaint said the conspiracy involved at least 3 unnamed Russian government officials. Russia's foreign ministry responded to the arrest this morning, saying the accusations were completely unfounded. Russia went on to say that the U.S. was acting in the spirit of the Cold War. The FBI is accusing the SVR, the successor organization to the Soviet Union's KGB, of running a deeply embedded espionage network. The goal of the spy ring was to gather info on the global gold market and Iran's nuclear plans, among other objectives. Now, each of the 10 alleged spies was charged with conspiracy to act as an agent of a foreign government, a sentence which carries a maximum penalty of 5 years in prison if convicted. Now, Mark Galeotti has more than 20 years' experience in international espionage, which includes teaching, research, and government service. His most recent projects include a global history of organized crime and an analysis of the Russian mafia. Mark is presently the academic chair and clinical associate professor of the Center for Global Affairs at New York University School of Continuing and Professional Studies. We're pleased to have him joining us now to get more insight, little reaction to this. So you were sort of funny, Mark, in the break saying, gosh, there's actually a purpose for my role, for my profession. My initial reaction was, is the Cold War back, or did it ever really end?
This is the point. In a way, it never really ended. There was a period under Gorbachev in the early 1990s where it looked as if everything was going to be fine and we were all going to be happy friends and so forth. It hasn't happened that way. And it's not necessarily that the Russians are bad people or anything like that. It's just that actually their national interests are not those of the West. And the sooner we realize that, the better.
So you're saying this is part of the Russian culture?
Yeah. I mean, let's face it. All countries spy on everyone else. That's the nature of modern international tradecraft. But on the other hand, it's a question of actually how deeply, what kind of activities you carry out, how aggressively you carry out your operations. This is major. I mean, obviously, we don't know if it's actually the case until it's proven in a court of law. But assuming that what the FBI says is right, this is a massive operation.
So then how pervasive is espionage here in the U.S.? And I guess the other side of the question, right, if they have spies here, we must have some there. I mean, is this really going on in full force?
Well, do we have spies over there? Of course we do. And I would hope we do. That's exactly what we ought to be doing. But on the other hand, in terms of the tempo of Russian activities, in recent years, it's basically reached the height of the Cold War in terms of how many spies they've got operating and how aggressively they're acting, which is different. I mean, there's no way of escaping the fact that the West actually has dramatically reduced the amount of espionage it's been doing in Russia.
What do you think of the claim that the arrests were politically motivated by those people who are opposed to better relations with Russia? This is a quote from Alexei Malyshenko of the Carnegie Moscow Center, and I believe we have it in a graphic, saying that this is meant to show Americans that Russians are untrustworthy and that confrontation continues. Your reaction?
I must say, I think it's nonsense. I respect Malyshenko as an analyst, but on the other hand, in this case, first of all, if it's proven, it's clear that in fact the Russians are carrying out long-term deep cover penetration of the United States. Now that really isn't a friendly act. Secondly, the idea that there's some kind of major conspiracy to try and sort of cause trouble. Well, if anything, I actually would suggest that the news of this was probably held back precisely so as not to break when we had the Russian President Medvedev who was here, because then it would have actually forced President Obama to sort of personally upbraid his counterpart or whatever.
Yeah, what's behind the timing since we just had this visit? And does it set back any improvement we've made in our relationship because of that?
Well, in terms of the timing, I suspect, and I don't know this, but you might say when you've got an operation carried out against professional spies, and let's face it, the allegations is that these people are Russian nationals, they're career intelligence officers who've been trained precisely for this job.